Quinn Grayson tightened his grip on the small paper cup of coffee, trying to ignore the sting of the cold rainwater dripping from his coat sleeves. He glanced down at the little girl beside him, her curly dark hair poking out from under a pink knit hat, her tiny hands wrapped around her own cocoa. "Hold on, Hazel," he murmured to his daughter, scanning the crowded café. Every table was full, the air buzzing with soft music and louder conversations. "We'll find a spot in a second, I promise." Hazel looked up at him with a hopeful smile. "Can we sit down before my cocoa gets cold?" He squeezed her hand. "I'll figure it out." The café was packed thanks to the sudden downpour outside, and Quinn was just about to give up and take Hazel back out into the rain when a woman sitting alone at a corner table looked up from her book. She was striking long chestnut hair, a soft navy coat, and a calm air that didn't match the chaos of the room. She caught his eye and gave a nod toward the two empty chairs across from her. "You're welcome to join me if you don't mind sharing." Quinn hesitated for half a second, then smiled. "Thank you, really, you just saved us." Hazel climbed into the seat beside the woman with a curious grin, and Quinn sat across from her, setting their drinks on the table. "I'm Quinn," he said, brushing rain off his jacket, "and this is Hazel." The woman smiled warmly at Hazel. "Nice to meet you, Hazel. I'm Rowan Mercer." Hazel leaned forward. "Are you reading a mystery book? Daddy likes those." Rowan laughed, her eyes soft. "I do. But I think your cocoa looks way more interesting than mine right now." Quinn watched them talk, Hazel immediately comfortable, Rowan completely at ease. It was rare for strangers to be kind to them like this. Most people avoided single dads with messy hair and discount raincoats. "What brings you two out in this weather?" Rowan asked, sipping her tea. Quinn rubbed the back of his neck. "Hazel had a school half-day and I promised her cocoa. I didn't realize every person in the city had the same idea." Rowan tilted her head. "You didn't have work today," he hesitated. I work construction, but the site's been slow with the rain, so no work today." He hated how that sounded, like he was failing, but Rowan didn't flinch or look away. Instead, she nodded like she understood. "Well, I'm glad you came in. This place needs more friendly faces." Rowan didn't say much about herself, but Quinn didn't press. She asked questions about Hazel's favorite colors and favorite animals, and Hazel answered every one with animated joy, her cheeks pink from the cocoa and attention. Quinn watched them, caught off guard by how easy it felt, how natural. After a while, Hazel leaned against his side, blinking sleepily. "She's wiped," Quinn said. "I should get her home." Rowan stood with them, pulling her coat on. "Do you need an umbrella?" "No, we're fine." "Thanks again for letting us share your table." Rowan looked at him for a beat too long, like she wanted to say something else, but then she smiled. "It was my pleasure." They were halfway to the door when Hazel tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetie. Can we see her again?" He looked back at Rowan, who was already turning to leave. "I don't think we'll see her again, kiddo," but Hazel wasn't convinced. "I think we will." 3 days later, Rowan couldn't stop thinking about them. She sat in the back seat of her town car, her assistant droning on about meetings, but her thoughts were back in that café. The way Quinn looked at Hazel. The way Hazel had smiled like the world was still full of magic. Rowan had grown up with luxury, inherited millions from her parents, built her own marketing firm before she was 30. People always wanted something from her contacts, favors, money. But Quinn hadn't asked her for a single thing. He hadn't even recognized her name, and that had felt good. Later that week, she found herself near the same cafe again. She hadn't planned it, not really. But when she saw a familiar figure walking down the street, Hazel's pink hat bobbing beside him, she stepped out of her car and called out. "Quinn," he turned, surprised. Hazel lit up. "Rowan," Quinn looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Hey, didn't expect to see you again." "I was just grabbing coffee," she lied. "Want to join me?" He glanced at Hazel. "What do you think, Hayes?" Hazel giggled. "Yes." That coffee turned into a walk around the block, then lunch at a sandwich shop, then another visit 2 days after that. Rowan didn't tell Quinn about her company, her penthouse, or the 6-figure cars she had parked in a private garage. With him, she liked being just Rowan. But she was falling fast, and that terrified her one night. After Quinn had walked her home to the modest brownstone she rented under a different name, he paused at the steps. "This has been nice," he said. Rowan looked up at him, heart thudding. It has, he brushed Hazel's mittened hand. She talks about you all the time, you know, Rowan smiled. I talk about her too. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world slowed. Rain started to fall again, soft drops tapping against the sidewalk. Quinn reached out, brushing a damp lock of hair from her cheek. This is crazy, right? Rowan's voice was barely a whisper. Only if we stop now. He leaned in, and she met him halfway. The kiss was soft, hesitant, but full of everything neither of them had dared say aloud. When they pulled back, Quinn looked shaken. I haven't felt like this in a long time, Rowan whispered. Me neither. Hazel tugged on Quinn's coat. Can Rowan come to dinner sometime? Rowan laughed, tears stinging her eyes. Only if your dad lets me. Quinn looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. Yeah. I think I'd like that. Quinn adjusted the steaming pot on the stovetop, the scent of garlic and roasted tomatoes filling the small kitchen. The apartment was modest, but clean, every surface worn with use but cared for. Hazel sat cross-legged at the table, coloring intently, tongue poked out in concentration. She didn't even glance up when he wiped his hands on a dish towel and crouched beside her. You think Rowan's gonna like spaghetti? Hazel nodded without pausing. Everyone likes spaghetti. Except maybe sharks, but she's not a shark, Quinn chuckled. Fair point. He stood just as a light knock sounded at the door. Hazel launched from her seat, racing toward it with socks slipping on the linoleum. I'll get it. Wait, Hazel, don't just, but she was already swinging the door open. Rowan stood in the hallway, cheeks flushed from the wind, holding a paper bag in one hand and a bouquet of orange tulips in the other. Hi, Hazel beamed. Rowan knelt to meet her eye level. Hi, Hazel, these flowers are for you, Hazel gasped. They're my favorite. Quinn leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. She's never gotten flowers before. Rowan looked up at him. Everyone should at least once. Can I come in? Quinn stepped back, letting her pass. Kitchen's just around the corner. Hope you're hungry. Dinner was chaotic in a warm, lived-in way. Hazel told a long-winded story about a class turtle. Rowan listened with genuine interest, and Quinn kept catching himself watching her how easily she fit into the space, how she didn't flinch when the cabinet door squeaked or when Hazel spilled a little juice. After Hazel was tucked into bed, Quinn returned to the living room where Rowan was curled on the couch, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of tea. I can't remember the last time I had a meal where I didn't check my phone once, she said softly. No one's stopping you from checking it now, Quinn replied, sitting beside her. It's in my coat, and I don't want it. He studied her for a moment. You've got secrets. Rowan didn't look away. Most people do, you hiding from something or someone. She set the mug down. I'm not married. No kids stashed somewhere, if that's what you're asking. I wasn't. Quinn's voice was quiet, but I've been around long enough to know when someone's used to walls. Rowan's lips parted, but words didn't come right away. Finally, she said, I built a life people assume they understand. But none of it ever felt like mine. He didn't push. Instead, he asked, so what does feel like yours? Rowan looked toward the hallway where Hazel slept. Tonight does. They sat in silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Then Rowan turned to him, her expression unreadable. I want to take you both somewhere this weekend. Quinn raised an eyebrow. Like where? It's a surprise. But I promise Hazel will love it, and you might too. He hesitated. I can't afford much right now. Gas maybe, but I'm inviting you, my treat. He frowned. I don't take handouts. Rowan didn't flinch. It's not a handout, it's an invitation. He studied her face, trying to read the parts she wasn't saying. You sure you know what you're doing? No, she smiled faintly. But I know I want to do it anyway. 2 days later, they were standing at the base of a hill just outside the city, crisp air brushing their cheeks. Hazel ran ahead, her boots crunching over gravel, shrieking with laughter as she spotted the pair of brown horses waiting near a wooden fence. Rowan turned to Quinn. You said she liked animals, he blinked. I said she liked dolphins and cartoons. This is a bit more than that. I have a friend who owns the ranch. She lets kids ride sometimes. Hazel's on the list today. Quinn crossed his arms. You planned all this. I wanted to do something nice. You didn't have to, I know. Hazel was already being helped onto a pony by a stable girl with kind eyes. She waved at them excitedly. Quinn leaned closer to Rowan. You always go this big. Rowan looked past him, her voice low. I don't usually go at all. He watched her for a long moment. You're not what I expected. That makes two of us. They spent the afternoon watching Hazel ride circles around the paddock, her face full of pure, unfiltered joy. Later, when the sun dipped low and the air turned sharper, Rowan handed Quinn a thermos of cider and sat beside him on a wooden bench. "You're good at this," he said suddenly. "At what?" Letting people in without saying too much. Rowan looked down. "I've had practice. I still don't know what you do. And you haven't asked," Quinn nodded. "I will when you're ready." She looked at him then, eyes soft. "I've never had anyone wait before," he smiled. "Then maybe it's about time someone did." They stayed until the sky turned purple, and Hazel fell asleep in the back seat during the drive home. Rowan carried her inside with surprising ease, settling her into her bed while Quinn cleaned up the kitchen. When Rowan returned to the living room, she hesitated in the doorway. "I should go," Quinn turned. "Do you want to?" She was quiet for a long beat. Then, "No," he stepped toward her, close now. "Then don't." When he kissed her, it wasn't like the first time, it was deeper, surer. Weighted with all the things they hadn't said but already felt. Rowan pulled back just enough to whisper, "You don't know everything about me. I know enough." She stared at him, torn. "You might not like the rest." Quinn brushed his thumb across her jaw. "I'll take that chance." Quinn stood frozen, still wet from the rain, holding Hazel's backpack in one hand and a folded flyer in the other. His eyes scanned the massive glass windows of the building in front of him, sleek, towering, and absolutely out of place with everything he knew about Rowan. He stared up at the polished letters across the entrance. Mercer and Wildest Strategic. The same name printed on the flyer Hazel's school had sent home, advertising a charity event sponsored by the firm. He wouldn't have looked twice, except the photo on the flyer showed Rowan, standing with a board of executives, her name in bold at the top of the list. Rowan Mercer, CEO. He hadn't said anything to her yet. He couldn't. Not until he understood what the hell this meant. He glanced down at Hazel, who was busy feeding a squirrel pieces of her granola bar on the bench beside him, completely oblivious to the storm brewing behind his eyes. "Daddy," she said, swinging her legs. "Why are we here if it's not a play date?" Quinn forced a smile. "Just wanted to see something, kiddo." She squinted up at the building. "Is Rowan in there?" he exhaled. "Yeah, I think she is." Inside, Rowan sat in a glass-walled conference room, her voice calm but firm as she addressed a table of executives. She wore a charcoal blazer, her hair pinned back, and her expression was one of cool authority. She'd given this presentation a dozen times, but today she couldn't shake the weight pressing against her ribs. Quinn had texted earlier, saying he was running errands. She'd offered to meet later, but he hadn't answered. She hated how much that silence distracted her. "Rowan?" Her assistant nudged her gently as the meeting wrapped up. "The driver's waiting. You've got the charity event walkthrough at 4. Push it to 5. I need to take care of something." Moments later, Rowan stepped out the front entrance, her heels clicking against the marble as the doors parted. She didn't expect to find Quinn standing there on the sidewalk, his arms crossed, Hazel sitting quietly on the bench behind him. "Hi," she said cautiously. "You lied to me." Rowan's heart dropped. "I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing when you let someone fall for you under false pretenses. Quinn, you're a CEO, you own this place. All this time, you let me believe you were just some woman with a good heart and a quiet life. I never said I wasn't more, you just never asked. I didn't ask because I trusted you." Rowan stepped forward, lowering her voice. "I needed to know if you saw me, not my money, not the name. Just me. Do you have any idea what it felt like, standing out here looking up at this place, realizing I've been bringing you into my apartment, my life, while you've been living in a world I can't even touch?" Hazel looked up at them, confused. "Daddy, are you mad at Rowan?" Rowan crouched in front of her, eyes soft. "Sweetheart, I never wanted to upset your dad." Hazel blinked, "But we like her." Quinn's jaw tightened. "That's not the point." Rowan stood slowly, her voice steadier than she felt. "I was going to tell you. I was trying to find the right way, the right moment. You should have told me the first time we kissed." "Would you have kissed me then?" He didn't answer. "Exactly," she whispered. "You would have seen the money, not the person. You think I'm that shallow, I think you're proud. And I respect that, but pride doesn't build trust, Quinn, and neither does hiding the truth." He looked down at Hazel, who was now fidgeting with her shoelaces. "We should go." Rowan reached for his arm. "Please, don't walk away like this." He pulled back without force, but clearly. "I need some air. And time. I can't think straight when I feel like a fool." Rowan didn't follow him. She simply watched as he turned and walked away, Hazel's small hand holding onto his, her steps slower than usual. Later that night, Quinn sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly together, the apartment dark except for the glow of the kitchen light. Hazel had fallen asleep hours ago, her favorite stuffed tiger clutched against her chest. He stared at Rowan's name on his phone screen. The contact she had saved as just Rowan now felt like it belonged to someone else, someone unreachable. He didn't know what rattled him more, her silence about who she was, or how much he still wanted to call her anyway. The next morning, a knock came at the door, soft but steady. Quinn opened it slowly, half expecting another flyer or a neighbor with complaints. Instead, he found a woman in a tailored navy coat standing with a bag of groceries in one hand and a bouquet of tulips in the other. But it wasn't Rowan. "Hi," the woman said. "You don't know me, I'm Devin." "Rowan's assistant. She asked me to drop these off." Quinn frowned. Why couldn't she come herself? Devin's expression was kind but unreadable. "She thought you wouldn't open the door." He stepped back, letting her place the bag on the counter. She turned to go, then paused. "She's not used to giving people the real pieces of herself. Doesn't mean she didn't want to. It just takes her a little longer than most." Quinn crossed his arms. "Is this the part where I'm supposed to feel bad for her?" "No." Devin met his eyes. "This is the part where you decide if you're willing to let someone imperfect love you anyway." She left without another word. Inside the bag, Quinn found Hazel's favorite cereal, a jar of his preferred coffee, and a small envelope nestled between them. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a short note, written in Rowan's neat handwriting. "I never meant to hide. I just didn't know how to be myself and still be enough for you. But I'd rather lose everything else than lose you and Hazel. If you'll let me, I want to try again, this time with nothing left unsaid." Always, Rowan. He read the note twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. Hazel wandered in, rubbing her eyes. "Is it morning?" "Yeah, kiddo." She looked at the groceries. "Did Rowan bring those?" Quinn nodded slowly. "Sort of." Hazel tilted her head. "Are we gonna see her again?" He looked at her, then out the window where the city stretched beyond their little world. "I don't know," he said. "But maybe it's time I stop being scared of what I don't understand." Hazel blinked. "That sounds like something from a movie." He laughed quietly. "Yeah, maybe it is." Quinn didn't go to the site that day. He stood behind the counter at the small hardware store where his friend Mateo had offered him a few extra hours. It was quiet rain tapping lightly on the windows, the bell above the door silent. He didn't need the shift, not really. But he needed to think. Needed to feel like he could still make decisions without his chest tightening every time he thought of her name. Rowan. He hadn't answered the note. Hadn't returned the tulips or the groceries or anything else that somehow made his place feel half full now instead of whole. But he hadn't thrown any of it away either. As he was restocking some screws near the register, Mateo poked his head from the back. "You've got someone waiting out front," he said, grinning. "Doesn't look like she's here for drywall." Quinn stepped into view, and there she was. Rowan stood in the doorway, no coat, no assistant, no polished veneer. Just a blue sweater and jeans that looked like they'd been worn more than once. Her hair was windblown, her face uncertain. He didn't speak. He just waited. "I tried calling," she said, her voice more raw than he'd heard it. "And I know you're not looking for more words, so I came here. Because I needed to show you something." She stepped forward, pulling something small from her bag, a folded sheet of paper, thick and worn. "This is the first check I ever got when I opened my firm. I kept it because it meant something. It meant I'd done it. Built something on my own." He blinked. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm donating the entire amount to Hazel's school," she said. "Not in my company's name, not as a press move, just mine, quietly, anonymously." He frowned. "You don't have to, I know." "That's exactly why I'm doing it." She placed the paper gently on the counter between them. "I'm not trying to fix what happened with money. I'm not trying to impress you with gestures. I'm showing you that what we had changed me. I want Hazel to have what I never did. I want her to believe that good things can come from unexpected places." He stared at the check, then at her. "Why now?" Because I've spent my entire life leading people, controlling outcomes, but I can't control this. I can only be honest and hope it's enough." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Hazel made you a drawing. It's been sitting on the fridge waiting for you." Rowan's hand tightened slightly at her side. "Can I see it?" He nodded. "After we pick her up. She's at Mateo's place. His wife's doing story hour." She exhaled, something easing in her shoulders. "I didn't think I'd get this far." "I didn't either," he said, then added, "But I'm glad you came." They walked the 3 blocks to Mateo's brownstone in silence, the city quieter than usual, clouds still hanging heavy above. Rowan's hand brushed his once, and she didn't pull away when his fingers closed around hers. When Hazel spotted Rowan from the window, she bolted for the door, barreling into her with a squeal. "You came back," Rowan crouched, hugging her tightly. "I missed you." Hazel pulled back, eyes wide. "Daddy said you were busy." "I was," Rowan said, brushing a curl from Hazel's forehead. "But not too busy to come back where I belong." On the walk home, Hazel chattered about a pigeon she'd seen steal a sandwich, and Rowan listened like it was the most important story she'd ever heard. Quinn didn't say much, but he watched them. And he felt something settle deep in his chest, something that had been restless for too long. That night, after Hazel had fallen asleep with her head on Rowan's lap, Quinn poured 2 mugs of tea and handed one to her. They sat on the couch, the television muted, the world outside quiet. "You know," he said, "I never thought I'd end up here. Here, as in this apartment, as in this life, raising a daughter alone, falling for someone who wears heels that probably cost more than my truck." She smiled. "I haven't worn heels in weeks." "I noticed." He turned to her, eyes serious. "I'm not scared of your world, Rowan. I just don't want to lose myself in it." "You won't," she said, "because I don't want the world I had. Not without you in it." They leaned toward each other at the same time, the kiss unhurried, unguarded. It wasn't new, but it felt different, like something sealed, something whole. The next morning, Hazel woke to the smell of cinnamon and laughter. She padded into the kitchen to find Quinn flipping French toast while Rowan tried to braid her hair, both of them grinning like they'd been doing it forever. "Are we a family now?" Hazel asked, blinking sleepily. Rowan looked at Quinn. He set the spatula down, walked over, and crouched beside Hazel. "We're figuring it out," he said. "But yeah, I think we are," Hazel clapped. "Can we get a dog?" Rowan laughed. "Let's start with breakfast." 3 weeks later, they stood on a rooftop garden overlooking the city. It wasn't a flashy event, no media, no speeches. Just a small group of people from Hazel's school, a few friends, and a string of tiny lights overhead. Quinn wore a simple suit, Hazel a pale yellow dress she'd picked herself. Rowan stood in a soft blue gown, her hair down, her shoes flat. They exchanged vows under the stars, Hazel holding both their hands tightly between hers. "I never knew love could be simple," Rowan said quietly, "until you made it feel like home. And I never knew I could trust someone again," Quinn replied. "But you made me want to." Hazel beamed as they kissed, then demanded cake before anyone could stop her. Later, as the city lights twinkled far below, Rowan rested her head on Quinn's shoulder, her hand in his. "You're not afraid anymore?" she asked. He looked down at her, then at Hazel dancing in a circle with 2 other kids. "No, not even a little." And above them, the stars flickered bright, unconcerned with wealth or status or the odds that had once kept them apart. They had chosen each other, and that was everything. The late afternoon sun dipped low over the lake, the sky painted in amber and rose. Quinn stood on the dock of the lakeside cabin Rowan had rented, watching Hazel skip stones across the water ahead. A breeze lifted the edge of his shirt, and the sound of the rippling water layered softly beneath the distant hum of cicadas. Rowan stepped down from the porch behind him, barefoot, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. "She's been at it for 20 minutes. I think she's determined to break physics. She's convinced the next one's going to skip all the way to the other side," Quinn said, taking a glass from her. "I'm not going to be the one to tell her otherwise." Rowan leaned against the post beside him, sipping slowly. "It's strange. How quickly this all feels. Normal, not strange," Quinn said, brushing his thumb along the edge of the glass. "Just good," she breathed out, eyes scanning the water. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't met that day?" He turned to look at her. "I think about how I almost didn't go into that café. I was going to take Hazel to the park instead." Rowan smiled faintly. I almost didn't offer you the table. I don't usually talk to strangers. Well, he said, stepping closer, I'm glad we were both out of character. Hazel called from the end of the dock. I got 6 skips. Champion of the lake, Quinn called back, grinning. Rowan's laughter was low and warm. She's happier. It's not just me, right? No, it's not just you. He paused. You know, she keeps asking when our house will have a yard. Rowan tilted her head. Are you saying you're ready to move? I'm saying she drew a picture of a house with a tree swing and labeled it home. Rowan looked down at her glass, then back at him. I've been looking, she said carefully, at places outside the city with space. I didn't want to say anything until I knew if I was in this for the long haul, he offered gently. She met his eyes. Yes, he set his glass down on the railing and reached for her hand. Then let's look together. Her fingers curled into his and she nodded once, a quiet certainty in her eyes. Later that evening, after Hazel had fallen asleep curled on a pile of cushions with a book still open on her chest, Quinn stepped out onto the porch again. Rowan followed, slipping into the seat beside him on the swing. The sky above them was scattered with stars, the lake reflecting them softly. Rowan rested her head on his shoulder. I got a call today, she said. One of the major firms in Chicago wants to acquire Mercer and Wilda. Quinn looked down at her. Are you considering it? I told them I'd think about it. I built that company because I needed to prove something, that I could stand on my own. That I had value outside my last name. And now, she said slowly, I'm thinking about what I want for the next chapter. I want to work with a smaller team, something more community-focused, less pressure, more meaning, he nodded. You'd be incredible at that. I want to be home in time for dinner. I want to help Hazel with science projects. I want to wake up beside you and not check a dozen emails before I kiss you good morning. Quinn turned toward her, his gaze steady. Then let's build that life. They sat in silence for a long time, the kind that felt whole and unhurried. I've never been this certain of anything, she murmured. Even when I was standing in boardrooms, running billion-dollar deals. Nothing ever felt like this. He took her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Because this is real, all the way down. The next month, they found a house. It was a 2-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a single oak tree in the front yard. Hazel picked the room with the slanted ceiling and the window that caught the morning sun. Rowan turned one of the smaller bedrooms into an airy office, though she often ended up working from the kitchen table. Quinn found work with a local contractor, the kind of hands-on labor he loved, close to home and steady. Rowan launched a new venture, a consulting firm that helped local businesses tell their stories in meaningful ways. No high rises, no shareholders, just heart. Hazel started at her new school in the fall, and on her first day, she wore a blue dress with yellow stars and carried a lunchbox Rowan had customized with tiny illustrations of all her favorite animals. That afternoon, she came home with a painting of their house, and the word family written in purple glitter glue across the top. On a quiet Sunday, with the scent of cinnamon rolls in the air and jazz playing low from the radio, Rowan handed Quinn a small wrapped box. He raised an eyebrow. It's not my birthday. Open it anyway. Inside was a set of old architectural sketches, aged and yellowed at the edges. These are yours, Rowan said. I found them in a folder under your bed. He stared at the designs, ones he'd drawn years ago when he dreamed of designing homes, not just building them. I haven't looked at these in a long time. I think it's time you did, she said softly. You're more than a builder, Quinn. You're a creator. And I want to help you bring these to life. His voice was quiet. You believe in me that much. I believe in us. He set the sketches down and pulled her into his arms, holding her close as the music played and the house settled around them like it had always been theirs. That night, after Hazel was fast asleep and the stars were thick above the fields beyond the porch, Rowan stood barefoot on the grass, her arms around Quinn's waist. We made it, she whispered. He kissed her temple. We're only just beginning, and they were. Together, they built a life not out of grand gestures or careful plans, but out of every ordinary moment they chose each other. Every time they listened instead of walked away. Every laugh, every quiet promise, every night they fell asleep with a little more peace than the one before. They didn't need the city lights or the titles or the applause. They had each other. And that was everything.